Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce Natalie Fayman. Her passion is helping exhausted, stressed out women create healthy, confident, and energized lives so they can look and feel who they were truly meant to be. Whether it's weight loss, stress, resilience, self-esteem, or career burnout, she can teach proven real-world techniques to build a more fulfilling life starting today. In her mid 50s, in the last 5 years, she's lost 85 pounds, earned a fifth degree black belt, began performing on stage with a Japanese Taiko drumming group. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Absolutely.
Learned to believe in herself unconditionally and started on a totally new career path. She's completely changed her mindset, and now she teaches other women to do it too. Every day is a chance to take one step closer to the life you want. When you change the way you think, you change the world. I love that, Natalie. Thank
Oh,
you
thank
so
you
much
so
for being on
much.
my podcast and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. What an incredible journey. Like just that biography just it makes me want to do some push-ups, really. Like it really it pumps me up. I mean, tell us first of all, I would never guess you're in your mid 50s. You look
Oh,
in your
thank
early
you.
40s. So
I've
obviously,
discovered the secret to eternal youth. You want to hear what it is?
of course.
Just act as immature as possible and people think you're younger than you really are.
Yes. If people don't see me right now, I'm doing the running
That's
man.
it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
I am still in denial about aging, and I refuse to believe that I'm not 25 years old anymore.
That's excellent. Well, you're 25 to me, definitely.
Yeah,
But I'm
twice
not too
over.
sure as
Twice
many
over plus a little.
25-year-olds would have the wisdom that you have.
Oh,
So
thank you.
please
Well,
tell
all
us
hard
what
earned.
brought you to this incredible journey.
Well, which journey are you referring to? The career transition that I'm in right now?
Let's start there. Yes.
Yeah.
What career
So
did you have before and where are you at today?
I am a veterinarian and I have been since 1991. I graduated veterinary school. So it's been
Wow.
like was that 31 years or something like that.
Wow.
And it just got to the point where I don't know if your viewers or your listeners are aware of this, but in veterinary medicine, there's a large problem with depression, anxiety, burnout, even a high suicide rate.
Wow.
Um, there's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of miserable people in this profession, and I felt that happening to me. And I think I probably passed the point where I would have considered myself to be burned out 15 years ago, but I just didn't really see another path for my life. I felt like I'm going to be stuck here until I die. I'm going to be miserable. There's nothing more to look forward to in my life. I feel like I described like the last 30 years of my life. It was like almost like just a black hole of nothing more than eat, sleep, work. Like I didn't really have any social life. I didn't really have much to look forward to. And I had no optimism for the future, didn't really see any chance for something different for myself. And as a consequence of that, I started to have issues maintaining my weight. And I think it was a lot of comforting myself with food, using food as a substitute for companionship and belonging and connection with other people, stress relief, boredom, all the reasons why people turn to food. And so my weight over the decades, my weight crept up until I was about 240 pounds. And then I blew my ACL, my right knee,
Oof.
and ended up having to have surgery. And I was telling myself if I'd had a normal body weight, I probably would still have two normal knees to this day. And that was kind of my lowest point. And I realized I really need to do something. And up to that point, I had tried every diet, every exercise program, and I could white knuckle my way through all kinds of misery for a month or 2 months. And then I would just get overwhelmed and discouraged and quit. It's, the whole merry-go-round that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are very familiar with.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, I was just kind of at my lowest point of misery, and I just accidentally happened to stumble across a weight loss group that was run by a life coach. And it was a completely different approach than what I had been used to. There was no list of foods that you can eat and can't eat. There was no rules to follow other than that you had to work on your mindset. And it was all about not what you ate, but why you ate. Specifically why you eat when you're not hungry, because you are trying to manage your emotions with food. And that was absolutely the case with me. And what I found was not only did the light bulbs just kind of start going off in my head, and as my weight started to come down, I realized that I was actually becoming a happier person, a more confident person. I was developing a sense of optimism for the future for the first time. And I can't even remember how long. All my relationships got better. I was just less stressed out. And the weight loss was like a side effect of all of those things. It was almost like I forgot about the weight loss because I was so excited about working on all of these other things. And so that was, seeing the transformation in myself as well as all the other women that were in that group just made me realize how much of a positive impact a life coach can have. And when I look at how I feel when I get home at the end of the day of, working at the veterinary clinic, I'm stressed out, I'm frustrated, I'm exhausted, I just feel completely emotionally drained, just a whole pile of negative emotions. But at the end of the day of coaching people and helping them make positive changes in their lives and seeing the insights and the inspirations that they come to through the coaching process, I can work the same number of hours in a day and feel energized and uplifted and inspired, and it's just a completely night and day difference.
Wow.
And so when I'm asking myself, am I really going to be able to stay in this career for another 20 years and be happy? How do I want to feel at the end of every day? It wasn't even a choice. I mean,
Right.
it was completely obvious.
Yeah.
So when the pandemic hit, everything shut down. All the activities that I just really love to do on a daily basis just got yanked out from under me, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I just kind of took the opportunity to say, okay, it's time to think about what I'm going to be when I grow up. And let's really make a plan for my future. I really can't say enough about how it feels to be part of somebody else's transformation, much less, just how I feel being part of my own transformation. I can't imagine a better way to spend the rest of my life. So that's when I decided to go into coach training. And I got my certification coming up on almost a year ago. And I'm
That's amazing.
constantly being reminded of how much I love this work and why this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
It's really incredible. You go to school and you have so much schooling. Do you think that that's going to be your forever career? And then there's some turn of events that actually push you towards something else.
Yeah, well, the 80-hour work weeks just kind of wear you down after a few decades. I got to the point where I couldn't keep my car in a straight line on the road anymore. And I realized if I didn't do something different, I was going to die doing this, and it's just not worth it.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations on becoming a certified coach. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's an ongoing process. The learning process is never over. And the difference that I feel is like I'm actually excited to keep learning and keep studying. Whereas before it felt like an obligation. It felt like a heavy burden because I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. And now I am. And it doesn't feel like work when you're inspired, when you're being pulled forward by inspiration and passion.
Exactly. And that's really the key element feeling. What does it feel like to you? If it starts to feel like it's work, it's really going to start to drain you. It's
Yeah.
not supposed to feel that way. I don't even know why it's called work. It should really they should change that to something else. Should be I can't think of the word right now, but work just sounds overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, no disrespect to the people that go to jobs that they don't like just because they have a family to support and they need a paycheck. But, that's when you ask yourself, how do I want to live my life for the next 20, 30, 40 years or longer? It's so important to find something that you're really passionate about, something that inspires you, because your family doesn't need you to burn yourself out and drive
Right.
yourself into the ground and die from an early heart attack because you subjected yourself to so much stress and so much misery on behalf of someone else. Those people want you there for long term. And if it means making a little bit less money or burning the candle at both ends for a while, doing two jobs so that you can study the skill that you want to have. It's a short-term sacrifice that it definitely pays off long-term to finally, however long it takes, to be in a profession that you truly love and that does not feel like work.
I totally agree with you. Natalie, do you feel that now that you've had your new career change or this transition, do you feel that you're on the path to your purpose, your life purpose, or do you feel that you're still in the middle of looking for your life purpose? Or
Oh no, I've definitely found my life purpose, but I think it's still going to be a lifelong journey, refining that and finding my path and just becoming better at it. We never stop learning until we die.
right?
So I never expect that this is a journey that I'm going to get to a finish line. Every time you come around a corner, there's just more trail ahead of you.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have it any other way. I want to keep stretching out of my comfort zone. I want to keep improving, and that's how I'm going to also be able to help other people as well. Because if I get to a point where I just want to stay in the same place and it just doesn't inspire me anymore, then I'm not any good to anyone.
that's so true. Oh my goodness. I love it. I love the motivation. So, what blows me away is that you're a fifth degree black belt.
Yeah, most people would never guess that looking at me.
How did that happen? How did you get involved in the martial arts? How long
Oh my
ago?
gosh. Well, let me tell you, when I was 14 years old, I was a really shy, mousy kid, zero confidence. I, walk around staring at the ground all the time, had no friends. My family moved every 2 to 3 years for my whole life. So I never really had a stable circle of friends. And I was very withdrawn. I was very much a loner. And when I was 14, a junior high school, one of the English professors actually was a judo black belt. And so he offered judo classes as a PE elective. So instead of doing the usual track and field or softball or volleyball or whatever, I'm like, well, I'm going to go try this. And let me tell you, the first time of course, I was the only girl, and I was the smallest person in the class, all these big guys. The very first time I picked up a guy that was like probably good 30 pounds heavier than me and dumped him on his ass, I was fucking awesome. And I mean, even though my family kept moving around, I was never really able to stay in one school from start to finish. That's probably part of the reason why I never really thought that I was going to get to a black belt. I just, wherever we settled, I would find another martial arts system, something that maybe was a little bit different, but that really spoke to me, that really appealed to me. And I just kept training, and it just became such an ingrained part of who I was. My whole identity just really became tied up in the martial arts. It gave me confidence. It taught me coordination, situational awareness. I learned to think tactically. I learned to look for problems before they happen so I can avoid them. And I learned also how to de-escalate situations. So the whole point of a martial art is to never have to use it,
Yeah,
but it's there if you need it. It's a sad day if I have to use what I know in like a real serious situation, because that means I've already failed, because I failed to see it coming and I failed to diffuse the situation before it got to this point. But if it gets to that point, I feel confident. I know that I can handle myself. And it even comes out, and this is something that really hit me a while back, like your body language. When you know that you can take care of yourself, you send out vibes that tell potential predators that you are not the one to pick.
yeah.
And I saw this when I was working the overnight shift. I had come into work, and my colleague, who was also female, was just leaving. It was right around midnight, empty parking lot, dark parking lot, and she parked, a very long walk away from where the front door was. And so I stood there at the door watching her walk to her car, and she was all slouched over, and she was all like pulled into herself like a turtle, almost like a turtle pulling into its shell. And the anxiety and the lack of confidence just radiated from her. And I was
Oh,
thinking to myself, if I was a predator, I'd pick her
right.
from a mile away. And it's
I mean,
amazing.
it's like that in the animal kingdom too.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's amazing how people can sense your innate confidence and that you have the ability to take care of yourself and that you're not afraid. And whoever is out there looking for a victim, they're looking for someone easy. They're not looking for a fight. They're going to pick on someone that they think they can get away with it. And that is not me. So
Yeah.
I have had very few problems, not zero, but I've had very few problems in my life. And part of the reason I've been so dedicated to martial arts for my whole life is just that statistic that in their lifetime, 1 in 4 women will be assaulted.
Oh, wow.
And that's I want to make sure that I have done everything I possibly can to make sure that that's not me or anybody that I care about. I feel like every woman should know some kind of self-defense because you're not always going to be standing next to some big strong guy that's going to protect you.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. So, for people listening to, if there's anybody listening for the first time, I used to be a female, and I got picked on a lot because I'm still little. I'm a little man, and I was a little female. And so, especially in junior high school, in high school, I got picked on all the time. And I remember this one guy, he wouldn't, I think at the time I was a green belt, and my confidence started to, build up. And this guy, tall guy, I mean, I'm barely like 4'11", and I say it tiptoeing in. So anybody over 4'11" is tall for me. But this guy must have been probably about 5'7", 5'8", and he would never let me get my lunch at school. He'd get in the way and he'd start like blocking me and laughing at me and putting his arms up and down so that I wouldn't go to the lines. Then that would always push me away and not have my lunch. And then finally I started gaining confidence, and I know how you said earlier, part of it is really learning how to control your temperament and whether you use it or not. Well, I had to use it, I felt at the time. So I remember I broke like a board the night before to get my green belt, and I felt all confident, and I seen this kid and he wasn't letting me get my lunch, and I was like, oh yeah. So I went under his arm when he lifted his arm to like block me to from the lunch line. I went under his arm and I did a spinning roundhouse kick into his ribs, and he fell on the ground. And I remember he just looked at me kind of like, what in the world did that come from? And after that, he never bothered me again. And I was able
Yep.
to always successfully get my lunch. So yeah, I do think that women,
Yeah,
women and kids and teenagers, especially if you're
absolutely.
smaller and you're gonna get picked on, like,
Yeah. But
yes.
what people don't really realize is that so many of the martial arts are built to teach a smaller, weaker person to defend themselves against a larger, stronger attacker or multiple attackers. And the lower your center of gravity is, the more of an advantage you actually have if you know how to use it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but absolutely. I mean, attitude is so much of it. I remember one time when I was in college, I was parking, I had a little moped at the time. I was parking my moped in this dark, deserted parking lot, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm completely by myself. And here come these
That
three
sounds
drunk
scary
guys.
already.
These three drunk guys come staggering back from a bar and they see this girl all by herself in a dark parking lot and they figure, oh, let's go screw with her. Right.
Oh
And
hell no.
I see them coming. And first thing I did was get my back up against a wall so they couldn't get behind me. So they're all three in front of
Ooh,
me.
I
And
love
they're
that.
like, hyping themselves up to see who's going to be the first one to try something. And I looked at the biggest one, I looked him dead in the eye and I said, okay, who's first? And their
Ooh.
mouths kind of fell open and they looked at each other and they left. And I was like, it's all attitude. Like I
It
didn't have
is
to do
attitude.
anything.
Yes. Wow,
I
that's
was ready
awesome.
to if I had to.
That's incredible. That's so motivating.
Yeah, it really is. It's just all about confidence and how you carry yourselves because people can read that. And
They
if
can
they
totally read
think
it.
that
Yeah.
they pick on you and get away with it, they will. And they can see instantly if they can't.
Yeah, it's in your energy field, that's for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
So Natalie, you're teaching women now how to change their mindset.
Mhm.
And how do you do this?
Well, it is a process because we spend our whole lives, in my case, 50, 55 years, I've spent practicing to be the way that I am and learning how to undo that and be a different person, which is really what you're doing when you're changing your mind. Your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings determine what you do or what you don't do. And so everything starts with changing the way that you think. And you have to unlearn the habits that you've practiced since you were a
Yes.
kid. It takes doing. It's a process. And part of the reason why we sabotage ourselves so much is because we think, well, I don't know how to be any other way. We
Yeah.
talk to ourselves so negatively, like, oh, I'm a failure. I can't succeed for, whatever the reasons are. I'm not good enough. I have to do X, Y, and Z, or people aren't going to like me. And we're so afraid to be ourselves. And we create these thought and behavior patterns that we think are going to help us get what we want out of life, or to avoid the things that we don't want. And what we don't realize is that we are actually creating our own obstacles most of the time.
Yeah.
So this is a big part of what I'm working on right now. So for the listeners who aren't familiar, I'm a positive intelligence coach. And this is all that we are working on, is how to identify our self-sabotaging thought and behavior patterns, how to recognize when they are doing their work on us and on all the people around us, how to shift to a more what we call a sage mindset, and to be able to use our gifts and our talents in the hands of our sage without letting them sabotage us, and basically how to know the difference, how to remember who you were truly meant to be before all the stress and the demands of the world started trampling all over you and turning you into this person who's just constantly stressed or frustrated or afraid to step out of your safety zone because you don't want to make other people mad.
Which is so common.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie, what is a sage mindset? I don't know what a sage mindset is either.
Yeah. So
I've heard like the sage women and
yeah.
and I use sage to to clear negative energy, but what does it
Yeah.
actually mean?
Yeah. So in order to understand what the sage is, I probably have to explain a little bit about what the saboteurs are. So
Yeah.
there are a set of distinct behavior and thought patterns that we call the saboteurs, and they are
Saboteurs? How do you spell that? I don't even know this term.
so it's like somebody who sabotages you.
Oh.
Saboteur.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Got it.
So what happens is that when we are children, we develop basically a way of being in the world and a way of acting around other people that we think is going to keep us safe, that's going to get us as much as possible of what we want and help us to avoid things that are unpleasant to us. How to stay safe, how to make sure that our parents are going to love and care for us, and that other people are going to like us enough to form connections with us. And so there are actually 9 distinct behavior patterns. So for example, there's the avoider. You avoid conflict or anything that is unpleasant because it's unpleasant. You think that if I avoid things that are difficult or harsh or just negative, then I can have more positive experiences in my life. But what actually ends up happening is that the pressure of the things that you're avoiding and procrastinating just keeps building and
Yeah,
building.
because avoidance is a resistance. And anytime there's a resistance, you're gonna trap yourself.
Exactly. So that's one example. Another example is the controller. You think if I can just control everything and everyone, that I can make things happen the way I want them to. But in the end, you just end up driving people away because they feel used, they feel disrespected, and you end up getting actually less of what you want because
Oh yeah.
people are intimidated or frustrated or irritated by you. So there's all these different saboteurs, and again, these are patterns that we created in childhood to kind of help us get along in the world, to keep us safe and to get the things that we want and to avoid the things that we don't want. But we overuse these techniques to the point where they actually start creating the opposite effect from what we want. So that's why we call it the saboteurs, because you think it's going to make you happy, you think it's going to get you success, but in the end, it gives you exactly the opposite. So the sage mindset is, if you can think back to a time in your life, maybe when you were 4 or 5, 6 years old, when you were still just innocent and happy, and life was just full of adventure, and you were just full of energy and enthusiasm every day, that's your sage. That is your
Oh,
original, true, uncorrupted essence. That is who you really are before your saboteurs started
so
to
your
play.
inner child?
Not necessarily your inner child, because there's different versions of that person, but that's actually how we start to learn to reconnect and remember who we really are, is by looking at our childhood picture.
Oh,
But
wow.
the goal is to become more of who that person is, because that person is still in you. It's just that he or she has been hiding behind the saboteurs. The saboteurs are just, they're scary, they're intimidating, they're making a lot of noise. And it's hard to hear the whispering, the inner wisdom of your sage, because it's being drowned out by all that chaos and distraction. So what we learn in positive intelligence is to start quieting the voices of the saboteurs so that you can hear the whispering of your sage, and so that you can be guided forward more by that wisdom, that innate wisdom that you've always had in your body, without all the second guessing and the over analyzing and, oh, what happens if this goes wrong? What happens if this person leaves me? What happens if I fail? There's always a gift or an opportunity in any outcome, any situation. So when you realize that, hey, even if things go wrong, even if I try this and I fail, there's going to be a door opening somewhere. There's going to be a way somewhere I can pivot. There's going to be some new opportunity that I can create. And it's all good. And I don't have to be afraid, because no matter what happens, I can go with it and I can make something out of it.
How do you get women to, okay, so they first they recognize that they're being these saboteurs. And when they start to recognize these saboteurs, what do you have them do? Do you have them write them down? Do you tell them that these are irrational beliefs? I mean, what do they do once they start to
Yeah, so
recognize it?
there's actually a structured 6-week program that we go through that takes people through a process of learning how to the first thing is how to even recognize that this is happening, because most of us talk to ourselves so abusively and we don't even notice, we don't even realize. We spend the whole day saying, God, I'm fat, God, I'm ugly, I got wrinkles, who would love
Yeah.
me? It's no wonder nobody wants to be around me. I'm a failure. I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. This is the narrative that is constantly running through our head, day in, day out. And the most influential voice in your life is the voice that you hear inside your head 24/7. And most of us have just become so accustomed to the emotional abuse that we heap on ourselves that we don't even realize that that's what we're doing anymore. So
Right.
step one is to recognize and to be able to see that that's what we're doing. Once you can hear it, then you can start to redirect it. So recognizing it for what it is really step one. And again, you have to overcome a whole lifetime of having practiced this negative self-talk. And in my case, 50 plus years that I've been talking to myself like an abusive asshole, and not even realizing it, and not realizing all the destructive effects that it's having on me. My lack of self-esteem, turning to food for comfort, isolating myself from friends and family and anybody that could have been a support system for me. All of these things are just a result of that negative self-talk, because I didn't think I deserved any better.
That totally makes sense. So
Yeah.
how do you start to redirect it? Because I can see how, because I've also gone through this myself when I was finding myself, that once you start to recognize these things, it'd be easy to still spiral back into that negative mindset. Like, wow, once you
Yeah.
recognize, I can't believe I've been doing this to myself. What kind of person? Why didn't I see this before? It can actually spiral. So, what do you do to stop the spiraling effect?
Yeah. There is a specific mind calming exercise that we learn in positive intelligence, and it can physiologically cause changes in your brain. So if you actually look at a brain MRI, all of the what they call the saboteur reactions, which are basically survival reactions, they originate from the left side of the brain, which is also coincidentally where your logical, rational thought
Oh,
process
well, no
originates.
wonder it's being erased.
Well, but here's the thing is that the more you try to think and reason and analyze your way out of a stressful situation, the more you're actually feeding fuel to the saboteurs, because that's the same part of the brain that they come from. So
Wow.
instead of trying to resist and fight and force a change, what we do is we learn to quiet that part of the brain through this focusing exercise. And once once all the noise and chaos and distractions of the left side of the brain have started to simmer down, that's when you can finally reconnect with the right side of your brain, which is where the sage emotions live. And the sage emotions are where all of your positive emotions live: your creativity, your inspiration, your passion, love, connection, focus, fearless, clear-headed action. All of the positive emotions live on the right side of your brain. And we've just overused the left side of our brain so much through our lives that it's just become our default go-to, and we completely forgotten how to use the right side of our brain. So this is a process, and it generally does take about 6 weeks to start to see that shift. But they have actually done brain MRI studies to show that after a 6-week period of practicing this self-command exercise is what we call it, you can actually see new gray matter in the right side of your brain
Wow.
and less gray matter in the left side where the survival areas are. So it really
Incredible.
does produce structural changes in your brain, and it has a huge effect. After only 6 weeks, I could say I noticed an immediate change in my baseline level of happiness, and just the amount of peace and tranquility that I felt inside my own head was dramatically different after 6 weeks. But I'm still working on it. It's going to be a lifelong process. It's never going to be over.
I like how you said that it's quieting your mind, because I feel that people are starting to step away from, but what was happening for a long time is that people were just thinking that self affirmations was enough, but self affirmations is not enough because you haven't quieted those other sabotaging thoughts.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you have to recognize and start to override that default process, and
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. And the other thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is they judge themselves so harshly for not being successful in a short period of time,
Yeah.
because they don't give themselves credit for, again, having to overcome 50 years of self-destructive thought processes. That is not going to go away in 6 weeks. It's not going to go away in a year. It's probably never going to go away entirely. But I definitely recognize that I have the tools to be able to start shifting more to a positive side. And it's not an all or nothing thing. It's more of like, how long out of a typical day do I spend in a positive mindset versus how long I used to spend being negative, beating myself down,
Being
calling
dragged down
myself.
by that negativity.
Exactly, exactly. So I would say I was probably stuck in a negative, self-abusive
Loop.
mindset 95% of the time before, and now it's probably down to maybe about 20%. My recovery time after I have like a really stressful day at work used to take me 2, 3 days before I felt like I wasn't going to have a panic attack to go back to work after like a really long nightmare of a shift. I'm down to about 20 minutes. And that is huge
That's incredible.
because it's no longer contaminating. I don't have to bring this toxic contamination home from work and let it eat into my personal time and ruin my whole weekend and just poison the time that I do get to spend doing what I want to do, what I feel called to do.
Natalie, is there such thing as fake it till you make it?
Um, I don't think so, because if you don't believe in to the core of your being that you really have the potential to be able to make a positive change, that is where self-sabotage comes from. If you don't truly believe that it's going to happen for you, you're just going through the motions, and the whole time you're telling yourself this is never going to work, it's never going to work, I don't really believe it. And you're going to be looking for an off ramp. The first time you have a bad day, the first time you're tested, you're going to say, see, I knew I couldn't do it. And you're just going to go right back to the way that you've always handled things before, the non-productive way. And people give up too quickly because they don't see progress. They see either I failed or I didn't fail, and there's nothing in between. Does that make
But how
sense?
does somebody start to believe? Is that through faith? Because you can't really believe until something more profound grounds you. And I'm just thinking as we're speaking, the word faith came to my head, and I'm like, well, I think that's where the whole faith that you can do it and that
Yeah.
you are doing it,
Yeah.
and that's when you start to believe it.
Yeah. So I think that motivation and belief comes when you see yourself making little gains, little victories,
Yes.
small baby steps. Maybe it's just like going to the gym. My first day of the gym, if I've been a couch potato my whole life, I'm not going to go to the gym and start squatting 200 pounds on a bar my first day, right? I'm probably going to start with maybe just my body weight. But that doesn't mean that I don't believe that someday, if I'm true to my workout program and I'm diligent and I push myself out of my comfort
Right.
zone, someday I'm going to be able to lift those heavy weights, but that day may not be today. But
Sure.
I'm still proud of myself for going. I'm still proud of myself because 6 weeks ago I could only do body weight, and now I can pick up this 45-pound barbell and squat that. That's a challenge for me, but it doesn't, again, I can only squat 45 pounds. I can't squat 200 pounds. I can choose to call myself a failure because I can't squat 200 pounds, or I can look back at how I was 6 weeks ago and say, well, I couldn't have even done this. So I'm proud of myself.
That's awesome, Natalie. Thanks so much for inspiring me, for inspiring all the listeners, the viewers, the watchers. How can people find you if we need to get a hold of you and your incredible coaching business?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, my website is nolimitscoachingnow.com. And that is where your viewers can actually book a free 30-minute consult with me if they want to kind of help me, get me to help them to work on a plan to get them wherever they want to go in their life, whether it's weight loss, whether it's becoming a more positive or optimistic person. If anyone is interested in hearing more about the Positive Intelligence Program, which has been absolutely life-changing for me, and I'm still on that journey to this day. I love talking about, I could talk about that stuff all day. So that is all on my website. There are free videos. There's a whole library of free videos. And I would love to talk to anybody that would like to hear more.
Excellent. Natalie Fayman, a former veterinarian. Now she's a positive intelligence coach, 5th-degree black belt, incredible motivation. Wow, wow, wow. Thanks so much for being on A Little Less for Your podcast. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Many blessings to you and all your loved ones.
Thank you so much. It has truly been a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank
Take care now.
you. You too.